Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Unstoppable Dad Project. Thank you once again for joining me on another episode this week. Before I get into today's podcast, please make sure you're subscribed on whatever podcast platform you're listening to this on. Apple, Spotify, Google. We are on all the major podcast platforms. You can also find video versions of the podcast that get released delayed from the audio versions on YouTube and the Facebook page. And you can find us on the social media at The Unstoppable Dad on Instagram and The Unstoppable Dad Project on Facebook. And while you're there, if any of the content or any of these episodes that I am doing resonate with you and you think that there's someone else in your life that might get some value out of what it is that we are doing here, please share this around and help me continue to grow this podcast, because the goal of this is to try and hopefully get some helpful information out there and also give you an insight into some of the things that I struggle with and let you know that maybe some of the things that I feel as a dad, as a husband, as a father, even as a coach and a business owner, aren't necessarily unique to my set of circumstances, even though it has my unique perspective on it, where everyone is kind of out there and having their own battles, and hopefully some of the stuff that I'm putting out there is helpful to you. And I try and come at this from the point of view of giving you kind of some helpful bits of information or some usable things that have worked for me or people that I've worked with that hopefully you can take into your own life and find what works for you and hopefully get you heading into a direction that you are happy with, or that you, if there's something that you want to change in your life, get you being able to take the steps to change that, get you to do those daily actions to start moving forward. And I guess on that, the topic of today's podcast is it's about keeping your promises. And there's a few different angles for this. And the reason I'm talking about this is because I've had a few phone calls over the course of the week, the month really, where I've spoken to a few clients, but I've also spoken to a few new dads and people who have been struggling a little bit over different periods. Some it's been like a 5-10 year thing, some it's just been a couple of months, but they're all struggling and they're all lacking a lot of confidence in themselves. And with that lack of confidence was coming a lack of direction. They weren't sure what steps they needed to take. They weren't sure what the next action they needed to do was. And it was just, they just kind of felt lost. They felt confused. They felt almost afraid. And I've been there. I've spoken about that a few times on the podcast. And the thing that the really common theme that I'm really finding is coming up with a lot of these people that I'm talking to is their inability to keep their promises, mostly to themselves, but also to other people. And what I mean by that is when they've set out to do something, let's say, for example, I'm going to use the health and fitness space because obviously that's the majority of my background. They want to start training more. They want to start working out more, doing some form of physical activity, and they set themselves a goal. They may set themselves a goal of going and doing something, say, 5 days a week. And then they get started and they're able to do it 2 days a week. And then maybe they're able to get a 5 day a week in, and then maybe they're able to get a 1 day a week in, and then they're getting none. And what happens is it kind of compounds because the goal, the promises they're making to themselves is they're going to do this 5 times a week for this particular activity, and they're not able to maintain that. They're not able to keep doing that. And sometimes it's not from a lack of trying. Sometimes it's from a lack of having the appropriate plan for the circumstances that they're in. And I've spoken about that quite a bit over the last few weeks, last few months, where I think having the right plan for the set of circumstances you're in your life is such an important thing, especially for a new dad or a dad who is trying to make an old plan fit and maybe being a little bit stubborn about letting go of the past. I think that is really one really important factor to consider, because if it's not from lack of trying, maybe it's the plan that you're trying to implement. Maybe that's the problem. But for some people, for some dads, for some clients that I've been dealing with, it is from a little bit of lack of trying. And this isn't a call out. This is more just that person potentially not understanding their priorities, so where it fits into their overall life, and then as a result of not understanding those priorities, linking it back again to the fact that they probably don't have an appropriate plan for the stage of life that they're in. So when they're not able to follow through on what they've set out to do, it then starts them on this slippery slope. It starts them on this downward spiral of thinking that what they've set out to do is not achievable. It sets them on a slippery slope of thinking that they're not a good person because they're not following through on what they've said that they're going to follow through on. And as a result, that systematically starts to eat away at their confidence, and over time that builds and builds and builds and builds, almost without you even knowing it, to a point where you just feel like you're in this deep insurmountable hole that you can't get out of. And then the thing that you're trying to change, or the thing that you're trying to implement, then gets put in the too hard basket. And for a lot of people, as a result of that one thing that you haven't been able to keep your promises to yourself on, that then starts to filter into all other aspects of their life. It starts to filter into their professional life, into their personal life, into their other relationships, and it creates this big mountain that almost seems insurmountable for them to overcome. That all comes back down to the fact that they haven't been able to keep the promises to themselves. Now, again, looping back to what I was saying, I truly believe that when I unpack a lot of this with quite a few of the dads and the clients that I've been working with, it comes down to the fact that most of them don't actually have the right plan for the set of circumstances that they're in. So I think that's the number one thing, is really addressing, like, am I looking at this from the point of view of the current set of circumstances that I'm in, or am I looking at it through a past lens, trying to achieve past goals to make myself feel better about where I'm in? And maybe I need to reassess the goal, and maybe I need to reassess the actions that I need to take, because then it might be easier for me to follow through on. So that's the first thing, making sure that you do have an appropriate plan for the set of circumstances that you're in. And then the second thing is, like, you actually have to do the work. If you don't do the work and you're half-assing it, or you're half-assing it because you're getting pulled in other directions, or maybe you're just being lazy. Let's be honest, there's times where everybody, me included, the most disciplined people in the world, I'm sure there's times where they go through bouts of laziness, where they just don't want to do things. And the difference between the people who are successful long-term and those who aren't is when if they've set out to do something and they've made a promise to themselves that they're going to do it, on those days where they're feeling lazy, they get up and they do it anyway. And I'm just talking about this from the point of view of just laziness, not if you're doing a workout, if you're trying to implement a workout regime and you're really sore, you're on the point, if you go and do it, you're going to get injured. That's a different story, because you can still do something else, right? Maybe you just go for a walk instead. So you're still keeping a promise to yourself of movement. We're just changing the angle of what we're trying to do due to, again, the set of circumstances that we're in. That set of circumstances for that individual time is that, hey, I'm very sore, I'm injured, I'm hurt, I've just got to change the activity that I'm doing, but I'm still following through on what I'm doing. And the thing is, once you start to stack those kept promises to yourself, even after a very long period of not doing so, you start to, it's happened time and time again with probably over 1,000 people that I've seen over the last 15 years that I've coached. Once people start to keep their promises to themselves through setting a goal and setting something that's sustainable for the season of their life that they're in, and they start to stack that proof to themselves that they are able to follow through with this, their confidence starts to grow. And it actually takes a lot less time than what most people think to come out the other side of that lack of confidence. Because if you can show yourself that you can continue to stick to a plan and continue to keep your promises for a 4-week, 6-week, 8-week period, then all of a sudden it doesn't become insurmountable anymore. It just becomes part of who you are, and it becomes part of the habit of what you do on a daily or weekly basis. So the biggest way I've found when working with people to improve the confidence that they have with themselves, and especially when it comes to trying to add a training regime in, trying to make any change in life, is to really just keep your promises to yourself. If you say you're going to do something, go and do it. And that then flows on to like the relationships that we have, especially with our kids. I think we all know, especially if your kids are a little bit older, you tell them on, let's say, a Monday 2 weeks removed from a Sunday that you're going to take them to a park in 2 weekends' time, or you're going to take them to the beach or whatever. They're going to wake up that day and call on you to keep that promise. And when it comes to, like, kids remember when we don't keep our promises to them, and that then I believe can start to have an effect on the way they see themselves and the way they see the relationship with you. And this isn't something to try and make you feel bad, because there are always going to be things that come up. I mean, I've just come from school holidays. Where I am was a couple of weeks ago, and for the first week of school holidays, I was completely sick. And I'd spoken to a daughter and son about like doing some different stuff over the school holidays, and I like physically couldn't get out of bed. So obviously that made me feel pretty shitty, but like there was nothing I could really do about it because I was sick. And I was at the point where I physically couldn't move. Now, if it was just a matter of me being lazy and me not wanting to do it, I probably would have given myself a little bit of a boot up the arse and got out and done what I had promised them I was going to do. But following through on those promises to them, I think you inherently know when you don't follow through on the promises you've made to them. And that, again, can wear away at your confidence of being a good husband, of being a good father, because, again, you're not following through and you're not keeping your promises. So the episode today was really just a reminder on, like, keep your promises. Most importantly, keep your promises to yourself, but keep your promises to those that are important to you, because by doing that, and then following through on those actions that you've set out for yourself, those behaviors you've set out for yourself, if you're in a point where you're kind of lacking confidence in yourself and where you're at, taking that action or setting out the goals and taking that action is going to do wonders to improve your confidence. It's going to do wonders to bring up your overall mood for a lot of people, your overall just well-being, and the way you feel about yourself and the way you feel about your relationships. There is one thing, again, that you probably want to make sure you're doing. If you are trying to stick to a plan, make sure that the plan is conducive to where you're at in life. Some people may need help to kind of build that out, may need to remove themselves from the situation. If you're struggling with mental health, please go and get some help. I spoke to a friend this week who told me that he'd been struggling, had absolutely no idea, but all credit to him, all power to him. He actually went out and he got some professional help, which is amazing. So if you're in that position, this podcast isn't necessarily about if you're in a really, really dark place. If you are, go and get some professional help to help you out of that. But if you're feeling a little bit lost, you're feeling like you're lacking a little bit of confidence, keeping those promises to yourself is going to be a big thing to start to get you to get out of that spot and get you moving forward on the things you want to move forward on. And if you need some help kind of building out a plan, especially as it comes to your overall fitness, health, and well-being, then reach out to me. You can drop me a message on Instagram at The Unstoppable Dad, Facebook, The Unstoppable Dad Project, and I'll get back to you and we'll go back and forth, and hopefully we can kind of help you get some actions to take. But number one, keep your promises. Number two, you actually have to take some action in order to improve your situation. So if there's something in your life that you're not happy with, you've got to start making some moves to get out of there. Otherwise, no action, you're not going to get out of that position that you're in. So hope everyone has a great week. Thank you again for listening. Thanks for taking the time each week to listen to the podcast. I appreciate you. Share it around, and I'll see you next week. Goodbye.